Okay, oh look, known miscreant Matthew Lloyd is here. If he said, if you could change the way conservatives think about one thing, what would it be and why? Pop culture, because that's where the battle is. We are always, as a species, fighting the last war. We think our freedom of speech is going to be under assault from guys coming at us with guns, so we have guns. Nope, they're not using guns. They're using things like having your name in the LA Times under white supremacists and all the rest of it. That's what they're using. Conservatives have walked away from the pop culture, which is understandable, but which is not wise. But it's everything. All of the things that this progressive belief, these limousine socialists, these Bernie supporters. I had this thought today at lunch. What they believe in is so shallow. It's so unbelievably shallow. It's why I say that blue map of millennials voting and we win Utah and the Democrats get everything else. I said this ocean of blue is exceedingly wide, but it's very, very, very thin. I never cease to be amazed at how easy it is to flip people on these things. And I was talking with somebody who was a big 9/11 conspiracy person one day, and she was saying, well, this and this and this, and the melting point is steel. And I mentioned, well, look, just because steel's not running doesn't mean it doesn't get soft. It doesn't have to actually melt and dribble down the side of the building before it will no longer hold the load. Things like this. Well, have you ever had a stick of butter? Have you ever dealt with butter? Yes. Have you ever taken butter out of the refrigerator before? Yes. Have you noticed that as the butter warms up, it gets easier to cut with a knife? Yes. Have you ever seen completely melted butter? Yes. Well, then you understand that there is a period in there where as the butter gets warmer, it gets softer before it actually melts, right? You understand that, right? You've dealt with this before. Yes. I guess it didn't happen. That's right. One person I talked out of the 9/11 conspiracy by simply saying this. You could tell that this whole business about a controlled demolition is nonsense for a number of reasons. But if you look at actual controlled demolitions, these so-called implosions, you'll find that they go from the bottom. The bottom goes first. The bottom collapses and then the top comes crashing down. And the towers didn't go down that way. The tops went down first. But I basically said to this person, I said, look, why do you think it is that the building that got hit first lasted longer? In other words, it got hit first, but it stayed up last. First tower got hit first, then the second tower got hit. Then the second tower went down, then the first tower went down. Why do you think of that? What do you think that is? Because the first plane hit higher up. The second plane hit lower. On the second tower, the impact was lower, and that meant that there was more weight above the damage point than there was on the tower right next to it. And because there was more weight above it, the stresses on those loads were higher, and so it collapsed first. It got hit second, but it went down first because simple geometry. If these guys had been well, I'm not going to get into motive or skill set or anything like that. Just suffice it to say that if by accident they had hit very low, if they crashed in on the top, on the bottom 10 or 20 stories, I don't think the towers would have survived the impact. I think they'd be down instantly or they'd be down within a few minutes. My point in this is just simply to say that, well, I guess you're right. Well, it's not so hard to figure out. The melting steel thing is just another example of this. So anyway, they believe it because people get all of their information from the pop culture, and we are so thin in that space, and I'm doing my very best to do something about it. But we still continually run into this kind of just kind of an arched eyebrow, like, pop culture, really? Aren't you going to, I thought you were talking about doing something serious. Like what? Like a position paper that we can write at the Heritage Foundation and then submit to various lawmakers, that kind of thing? Or do we want to actually go and change people's minds and give them some social proof, some permission to believe the things that we believe? That's why I've said a couple times that Kanye West supporting Donald Trump is the most important thing that's happened in this country since the election of Donald Trump. He put a big crack in this continuous wall of shame. The wall of shame that that's designed to make anybody with a conscience feel guilty about being a conservative, feel guilty about being a Trump supporter. You're a racist and you're a bigot and he's an idiot and along comes this guy who I have very little respect for earlier, much more lately, simply because he hasn't given in. And he says, I kind of like him. And then he gets death threats and calls from all of his colleagues, and fairly reliably calls from the former president of the United States saying, you can't just say that you agree with somebody who's on the other side of the fence here, because if you do, that's the end of the game. And sure enough, support for Donald Trump among black American males went up, doubled in a week. So that can't be allowed. So I would say pop culture, known miscreant.